Coming up, we're connecting you with the creativity and culture in your community, including an illustrator who's making a mark on the craft beer industry.
There's 1,000 different IPAs to choose from, and you got to pick somehow. So I like to think that my artwork helps the customer decide.
A local author's debut novel is a science fiction extravaganza.
Humanity has failed in its attempts to kind of save the environment, and we had to leave and move off planet to different settlements.
And a Holyoke artist with a dedicated following shares her love of painting.
I wanted a place where people can feel welcome and safe. I wanted people to feel good about themselves and be productive.
Join us for those stories and more as we explore the creativity, culture, and community that make us Western New England. Up next on Connecting Point.
Support for Connecting Point is provided by our contributing viewers.
Welcome, and thanks for joining us for Connecting Point, your source for creativity, culture, and community. I'm Tony Dunn in for Zydelise Bauer. Every week, we explore all that Western New England has to offer. And on this rainy day today, we're coming to you from Zott Park in Chicopee, a beautiful green space in the second largest city in Western Massachusetts. But we start off our show today in the town of East Longmeadow. Dean McKeever is a freelance illustrator who specializes in eye-catching, colorful illustrations and designs. He's worked on custom commissions, designed skateboards, and even has his own line of illustrated glassware. But he's perhaps best known for creating some of the most iconic packaging in the craft beer industry. Producer Dave Fraser brings us his story.
When you look at the myriad of craft beers that are available on the shelves these days, what sets one apart from the other? If you ask illustrator Dean McKeever, it's the label.
Bright, colorful, pops off the shelf to catch the customer's eye in the store, because nowadays you walk into any store, especially like a craft beer store, and there's 1,000 different IPAs to choose from, and you got to pick somehow. So I like to think that my artwork helps the customer decide. This right here was actually my first label.
McKeever is the man behind Keever Art and is the illustrator behind some of New England's most sought-after beer labels. A lifelong illustrator and designer and son of an artist, he says he was always known as the artistic kid in class while growing up. Today, he works out of a converted bedroom turned studio in his East Longmeadow home.
This is like my haven up here. I'm surrounded by my collection too I collect oddities and vintage stuff, basically. It's just, I like to surround myself with my collection, and I like to say I sort of take the energy from those objects and infuse them into my work, but that might just be a cop-out so that I can collect more cool stuff.
McKeever's illustrations can be found on the labels of craft breweries throughout New England. But he says it all started back in 2015 with an email he sent to Treehouse Brewing offering his services.
It was great to start with them, while they were kind of still in their early stages, kind of like I was in my career. Of course, they've exploded to crazy heights now, but it really opened up my career to other breweries and industries, and it was kind of what gave me my leg up into the industry. I have 1,000,001 brushes I can use.
What starts as a simple idea on his iPad becomes the face of the beer that helps attract new customers and separates one brand from the rest of the market.
The brewery will usually give me a basic guideline of what they're looking for. For example, if it is a darker beer, they'll want like maybe some more monochromatic colors. If it's a brighter hoppy beer, in the opposite direction, some more, color pops and that sort of thing. So this one was for Vanish Valley Brewing in Ludlow. It's called Look to the Valley. So I wanted to use like a lookout tower. You can see the guy up here sort of looking at the misty valley and got the fall foliage, and just really wanted to capture that sort of New England vibe in the fall. I'd like to think I achieved that. Just make sure you hand wash them, okay? Okay. They'll last forever.
Along with his beer can illustrations, McKeever and his wife started making a line of glassware with his unique artwork called Keever Glass.
It's meant to mimic the shape of a beer can. It's just been so fun, like a nice side creative outlet for me, because I love working with my breweries and my clients, and getting art directed by the higher ups to deliver imagery that they want for their brand. But Keever Glass is great because my wife and I are in control of it. We brainstorm all the imagery and the ideas, and it's super fun to ship our glassware literally all over the world. Something you can hold but it's a usable piece of art, which I think is really cool. And it's right in that craft beer industry that I'm comfortable with.
McKeever has done hundreds of labels over the years, and each one is unique. But one thing he didn't expect was that after the beer has been consumed, some of the labels live on.
People turn it into coasters, keychains, like light switch covers. People will cut the top off the can and plant succulents in them. Once the beer has been consumed, it's kind of about my artwork at that point, and it gives it like a new life, which is pretty neat to see.
Every week, Connecting Point explores the creativity, culture, and community that make us Western New England. But it doesn't stop there. You can find us online anytime for exclusive features and content. Along with creating labels for the craft beer industry, illustrator Dean McKeever also created 2 murals on the walls of a local brewery. The murals pay homage to the 4 towns that were disincorporated to make way for the Quabbin Reservoir, as we find out in this week's digital exclusive.
And then when you go downstairs, it's a rendition of my watershed label for them, which is another one of their pale ales. And it has sort of an underwater scene with like sunken cabins and fish and stuff.
You can find that digital exclusive online right now at nepm.org/connectingpoint. Michelle A. Barry has released her debut novel entitled Plotting the Stars 1, Moongarden. This dystopian story takes place in space as Earth has become uninhabitable and follows a 12-year-old protagonist as she discovers a secret garden and begins uncovering government conspiracies. Zydelise Bauer spoke with Barry to learn more about the book and the different topics it touches upon.
The book is a science fiction fantasy retelling of the secret garden. So the garden element was there from the very beginning, but I kind of wanted to see how I could kind of make it my own. And obviously climate change and, pressures on the environment are a really real concern these days. So it kind of seemed natural that to create a space where a garden, couldn't be like, why did that happen? Kind of like back up why, why would that be? Why are they living on the moon? And it's because, humanity has failed in its attempts to kind of save the environment, and we had to leave and move off planet to different settlements. And even though the characters have moved to an off-world settlement, they have, this really advanced technology. They even have some magic. It's still not a real solution for them. There's still a lot of problems that come with that, as the characters start to see. It's not a permanent solution. It's not a real solution. So I think kind of the underlying message in the book is that we have one Earth, we need to take care of it. We don't have magic that I know of that, that's real to kind of solve our problems. So it's something I hope kind of communicates through the story.
You're talking about some topics such as suppression, corporate corruption, climate change. So what type of research did you do to prepare yourself to write an accurate novel, even though it's fictional?
So I definitely took a lot of liberties with the science in the novel, though I did try to do some research to see, like, could this maybe one day be feasible? One element that I thought was pretty neat is that in the book, the characters are surviving off of cloned planting material. So they don't have any gardens on the moon, or so they think. So they use a bit of magic and a bit of technology to clone the plants in order to create food. And that kind of breaks down, and that creates the conflict for the novel. So I did a little bit of research into that, and there is real life plant cloning that does happen now using plant tissue and that sort of thing. So I kind of went down a rabbit hole, like learning about that. And then a kind of just a fun aside, my editor actually pointed out to me, because some of the characters have magic that's associated with electricity. And she discovered through her own, just researching and, looking around, that plants actually give off an electrical charge. So I did a little bit of research into that and ended up incorporating that as kind of a plot point in the novel, which was kind of a cool thing to see.
That's super cool. So like now being an adult, I'll watch some science fiction things that I saw younger. And it always amazes me how, even though it's science fiction, like it actually replicates real life pretty closely. So that's really cool that you found out those things.
It's true. Yeah, it really is funny how we're not that far off from, things that are in sci-fi movies maybe 20 years ago.
Right, exactly. And so you mentioned also that it's inspired by The Secret Garden. I completely loved that movie and book as a child as well. But you describe it as The Secret Garden for the next generation. And so what was your process like to put yourself in that mindset to write and cater to these future generations?
So I just wanted to really think about what was relevant to kids today. And lucky I have good source material in my household. I have an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old. So, just hearing the things that they talk about and are concerned about. And kids today, I think even really young kids like elementary school are very aware of the environment and the effects of climate change and that sort of thing. So when writing a new book about the Secret Garden, I really like I had said, I wanted to bring in that whole climate change environmental element, because I think kids really are dialed into that, and it resonates with them, and they see the danger that's approaching with, if we don't make changes, what could happen to us. So I felt like that was a really relevant topic for kids today. So that's kind of the direction I took with that.
So another topic that this book touches on is the pressures of growing up, and we all can relate to that. So tell me about the main character and the adventures and kind of the trials and tribulations that she goes through with growing up in this book.
So with Moongarden, obviously it's a huge, dramatic backdrop with being set in outer space with magic and this huge kind of galactic conspiracy. But at the heart of the story, I've always really felt like it was very much a story of self-discovery. And, Myra is a typical 12-year-old girl. Even though she goes to school on the moon, she still goes to school, and the same struggles that, kids have today, she's still having, hundreds of years into the future, where she's trying to figure out who she is and, what friends she wants to have and how to make those kinds of friends and how to keep those kinds of friends and how to deal with, pressures from, her teachers and also her parents and what they expect her to grow into. And when that doesn't always align, how do you handle that, and how do you deal with that, and how do you value what you have inside of you that's special, whatever, your individual magic is, and make that, align with what other people expect of you, and how to, grow your voice and find your place in the galaxy.
This book is the beginning of a series. So how do you determine where one story ends and the next one begins to set it up for sequels?
It's a great question. So it's kind of tricky because I started with kind of an end game of where I wanted the story to ultimately go, but you kind of have to dial it back and figure out what's the first kind of opening act of the story, and and the middle act, and then the final act, and how to tell a complete story within each book, but still have it play into the greater 3-act theme of the overall story.
This book is described as a dystopian series. So after writing the first one of the series, what do you hope for future generations? What should people really be mindful of when we're reading this book?
I think maybe just not taking everything at face value. It's okay to question things if they don't seem to make sense. If something doesn't seem right, maybe it's not right. I think just trusting your own judgment, and being able to just see if something's wrong, maybe it's something you can help fix as well. And having some kind of a voice and power in that, especially with the, younger generation coming up and eventually will be the ones running the show. It's okay to question things and maybe find better ways to do things.
And author Michelle Berry reads an excerpt for us from her debut novel, Plotting the Stars 1, Moongarden, in a digital extra.
I pause next to a section of wall opposite the entrance to the classroom and lay both hands on it, then press my ear against the cool metal. I feel like there's something in here, something I can't see. It's almost like feeling a heartbeat, except without the pulse or the sound. I know it's strange, but I feel like there's something alive in here. I shrug. I don't know how to explain it. Finrose quiet for a moment. A blue light flashes slowly from somewhere in her metal shell, and then she takes off like a rocket.
You can find that digital extra and so much more online right now at nepm.org/connectingpoint. For the past 10 years, the block of Ray Street in Holyoke between Dwight and Middle Streets has become the burgeoning hub for arts and entertainment in the area. This is in no small part due to the addition of the Gateway City Arts Complex and all that it entails. But there are several other artists contributing in their own unique way, as Connecting Point's Brian Sullivan found out when he came across a painting class with students who've been committed to their instructor for nearly 20 years.
It's late morning, early afternoon on a Wednesday at 80 Ray Street in Holyoke, and while Marianne Benz quietly puts the final coat of glaze on her ceramics, next door it sounds like there's a party going on, albeit a very well-behaved party. The units in this building are home to several local artists who tend to keep to themselves. But here at Debra Dunphy's art studio and gallery, it's a place where people not only learn to paint, or learn to paint better, but also have fun and enjoy the camaraderie in the process.
I wanted a place where people can feel welcome and safe. And, I wanted people to feel good about themselves and be productive. Have fun, meet people, and learn something.
It's been a long journey from her days of working in the fishing industry back in New Bedford to establishing herself as the kind of artist with a waiting list of people wanting to take her classes. And so far, the retention rate is pretty high.
I've been here about 7 years. Found Debra at the Windsor Palette and Brush Club when she came and did a demo for us. And we liked what she did at the club, so we decided we would sign up for painting lessons.
But while Betty and her husband have been regulars in class for several years, Dunphy does almost no advertising for her classes. So if there are going to be any new members, it's usually through word of mouth or happenstance, as it was in the case of Bruce Gendron.
This is a framing shop in West Springfield, and he had Debra paints animals, and he had a couple of portraits of dogs up there, and her card was there. So we started talking, and he said, she's very good. She has classes, and that's where I heard about her.
The workspace may be elbow to elbow these days, but there was a window of time when things looked bleak. It was during this time that these students showed that this is more than just some class. This is their community, and Debra Dunphy is the reason that they keep coming back.
You can do it. You can do it. They've been so great. They've been very helpful to me during the pandemic, because I had to close my group for a while, so that was really tough. But they were right there for me. They were still sending me checks, to keep the classes going, because they wanted to make sure I was still here. And I don't know, it's just, I love them all, and I've had them here for years. My oldest one, not oldest person, but the one that's been with me the longest is Bernadette, and she was with me for 20 years.
And that 20-year run in Western Massachusetts started right here in this section of Holyoke for Dunphy, just not on this side of the water. For the longest time, the building just on the other side of the canal here served as the arts hub in town. In fact, Debbie Dunphy was there for 10 years before coming here in 2013. And just within the past few years, this little stretch of buildings here on Ray Street has become the new hotspot.
This is the best class that I've had in a long time. I mean, it's very friendly. We learn a lot. She takes interest in each student and how they progress. And she's keyed into every student, no matter what level you are.
There does appear to be one element serving as the thread that ties this community together, and it's not proper brushstrokes or use of negative space. Its sounds emanate from this little device here, and it often sets the tone for the entire class.
Debra always has music on, so if it's something that, we're not all the same age, but roughly within a century or two, So when something comes on, the heads start nodding. They recognize this tune right away, all set to belt out the chorus, So it's fun.
If you come in and you're all worked up and tight, by the time you leave here, you're feeling good.
I want them to feel fulfilled, like they came and they got something out of it. I want them to walk out half an hour later and still feel good about it and not feel any bad vibes. I just want good vibes.
And you can learn more about Debra Dunphy's passion for art in a digital extra.
But you get that stereotype, that crazy artist, or that's a great little, vocation. Well, what are you going to really do? So I tried other things. I didn't like it. I lived in New Bedford, worked in the fish house.
That digital extra is available online at nepm.org/connectingpoint. Since 2018, Parent Villages has been on a mission to improve the quality of education for students and families throughout Western Massachusetts. Through monthly meetups, special programming, and community partnerships, the organization builds bridges between parents, students, and educators to ensure that their needs are met and exceeded. Zydelise Bauer spoke with the president of Parent Villages to learn more about how the organization began and the resources that it offers.
I try not to cry when I tell the story, but when I was first involved in the school committee, I was I was sitting in a meeting and there was a report done. And one of the ladies talked about kindergarten readiness and preparedness, and she said 7% of our kids were ready for kindergarten. And I waited and was really focused on that for the whole entire time she was doing her report. And at the end, I asked, did you say 7 or 70? And she said 7. And I said, so 93% of our kids are not ready for kindergarten. And she said, yeah. I couldn't wrap my mind around that and why that was the case. And so when I went back and talked to the other women that co-founded Parent Villages with me, Cindy Gaynor Harper, Paige Monroe, and Ayanna Crawford, I told them what happened and I said, we have to do something about it. And we thought about all these ideas and then I said, well, why don't we name it Parent Villages? And that's kind of where we started with going out, educating the community, and trying to do our best to make sure that we can bring resources to families that don't know how to access them or where to go.
So speaking of your name, Parent Villages, your motto is "It still takes a village." So what are some of the partnerships that you have in place that form your village, and what are the resources that they offer?
So Bay State Health is one of our larger partners. Springfield Works is another partner that we have. The Springfield Public Schools is always interacting with us and working alongside us. Statewide, we are involved in MEEP, which is Mass Education for Equity Partnership, Strategies for Children. The list goes on. There's just so many different groups that we work with depending on what the issue is, depending on what the concern is. The reality is that education isn't just about what happens in a classroom for our children. Education extends beyond that. And so we believe that in order to support our kids, we have to support the parents and those that care for them. So providing 2-generational programs and access to those opportunities are extremely important.
And that brings me to my next question, because I love that aspect of the program. It really supports the students, but the adults and the caregivers. Tell me about the impact that family engagement has on a child's education.
Family engagement is huge, right? If you find a school that's a level 1 school, that a school that's succeeding, you're going to find a school that highly engages their family. Statistics prove it, they show it. One of our partners, the Davis Foundation, was very involved in reading success by 4th grade, and actually founded that. And so we worked alongside them as well and still do continue to work alongside with them, trying to not only say, here, let's get a book in the hand of a child, but also let's encourage the parent to read to the child and understand why is that necessary, right? So that's a very clear example of why engagement with family is important. And again, not just in the classroom, outside of the classroom.
Let's talk a little bit more about the students. I want to highlight a lot of the work that you guys do. So from workshops to scholarships, you have shown up for families and students in many ways. I know last year you were giving out free laptops to families.
Yes.
Your Education Matters programs gives out scholarships to many students. So tell me another moment of impact that has really stuck with you and reminded you of why you do the work that you do.
We had a student who came into our program and he's on the spectrum. I'm not sure where because I'm not a doctor, but he was on the spectrum and his mother was very concerned about whether or not he'd be able to stay in the program. And he came in and the first day it was kind of trying because we were like, okay, we got to be patient with him. We want him to get to feel the surrounding. But I tell you, by the 3rd time he came in, he was talking to the young people. By the time we ended the program, he was just so outspoken. He was so well loved. The kids were talking to him. He was talking to the kids. He wasn't hiding in the background anymore. He was engaged. And his mother contacted me. She said, I didn't believe my son was going to last here, and because I was nervous. He'd been in COVID for 2 years and isolated, but he did so well. Not only did he do well, he's excited to be here and he wants to come back when you have this program again. And it's like, that was so awesome. And I seen him in the community and he's like, hi, Mrs. Naylor. And I was just like, oh, this kid that wouldn't talk to anybody. And now he feels like he has a village and he has friends that he made through the program. So that was one of our young people. And then for our adult village builder, we had a lady, beautiful, beautiful young lady. Sorry.
That's okay.
Trying not to get emotional, but we had a lady and she went through a lot. She had been in a domestic violence situation. She had a child and she's trying to get herself together and do better. And so she said to me, I wasn't going to come back because, you know, I didn't know if I felt motivated to be here. She's like, but something in me kept driving me to come every time. She said, and I'm so happy that I listened to that voice in me that kept saying, come back, come back. She's like, and now I'm a changed woman. Now I have a different mindset. I understand what I need to do and I'm ready to do it. And I was just like, yay, that's what we want. That's what we want, you know? And so having those conversations and seeing the change and really connecting with people on a level that's authentic, it's powerful, it's invaluable. There's no amount of money that you can put on it to price that. It's nothing that I can say really can make me feel any happier than seeing that kind of transition for people.
And that does it for this edition of Connecting Point. Remember, you can always find all of the stories that you saw in this episode, as well as exclusive features, digital-only content, and so much more online anytime at nepm.org/connectingpoint. Our thanks to the City of Chicopee for hosting us today. And please be sure to join us again every week right here for more stories of the creativity, culture, and community that make us Western New England. I'm Tony Dunn in for Zydelise Bauer. Thanks for watching and take care.
Support for Connecting Point is provided by our contributing viewers